So this has been one of those multi-video projects. Customer gave me this lawnmower, told me that the belt was falling off, wanted me to repair the belt. So I took care of the belt. There was several issues with the deck. I had a bushing and new belt, and an adjustment had to be made on the lever that engages the belt. And I got it working. Well, when I got it working, it threw out a big ball of smoke. I mean, the engine did. Now, she told me she was having some carburetor issues and that gas was getting into the crankcase. So when I looked, there was gas in the crankcase. So I made the assumption that when I fixed the mower deck, then it must have blew a seal in the carburetor and flooded it. So I checked the oil, and yeah, there was gas in the oil in the crankcase. So I told her we need to replace the carburetor. She agreed. So I started replacing the carburetor. While I was fixing the carburetor, I thought, you know, I better check that head gasket too, because it may have been compromised in all this mess also. And it was. You saw in the video that I made, I replaced the head gasket. Well, that worked, so we are no longer smoking. As I was testing it to see how the carburetor and the head gasket did, it started surging real bad. So I assumed that it was the governor. On the outside of the engine, you have this stick here that is regulated by a spring. But on the inside of the engine, there are counterweights that spin around on what's called a oil slinger. And as you need more power, the counterweights go in, I guess, and that increases the throttle. As it goes back, it gives more gas to the carburetor, opens the throttle of the carburetor. If it throws one of those counterweights inside the engine, then it goes out of control and starts surging like this, back and forth, back and forth. So you can hold it, the stick here, the governor stick, and if you can hold it and it stops surging, then you know it's not the carburetor. You know it's the governor. Well, I did that. So I got to replace the governor counterweights. But that was going to be a costly project, and she said she didn't want to do it. So she gave me the mower for the cost of the repairs that are already put into it. So I'm going to change the governor and then sell the mower for the cost of the parts that I have into it already. I may make a little bit of money on labor, but it won't be a lot. So this was a loss for me on labor, but at least I didn't lose the money on the parts, or she didn't either. So hopefully we have still somewhat of a satisfied customer. On the other hand, as I was doing all this thing's 30 years old, 27 years old. As I was doing all this, I pulled the spark plug wire off the spark plug, and when I did, it separated. So I had to make a temporary repair. I was going to have to fix that whether she kept the mower or not. So I have a new ignition coil. The ignition coil is what the spark plug goes into. So you have an ignition coil that goes up next to the flywheel magnet, and as the flywheel goes around, it generates electricity, sends it to the spark plug, and the spark plug creates a spark. So we're going to replace that today. Not a very hard job, other than you got to take the shroud off. That's the biggest part of this. And for some reason, the engineers of this engine thought it'd be neat to put two shrouds on, one underneath the other. Now this is going to be a lot easier since it's not attached to the mower. When it's attached to the mower, you have to use a socket, a ratchet wrench, and then it's very painfully slow. And like I told you, we have another shroud that we have to get off. Okay, so this is the ignition coil. So now you should be able to see that the spark plug wire runs down to the spark plug. So you got the flywheel, and we'll turn it to the magnet. So the magnet here, so the flywheel helps create the spark when it crosses paths with the ignition coil and sends the electricity down to the spark plug. So we're going to take this off. There is a wire on it that is the shut-off wire. So when you turn your key off, this is what shuts your engine off. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of try to size them up a little bit, see if they're somewhat the same. They don't, the center is much different. Wow. Well, we'll just have to see if this is right. Maybe I ordered the wrong one, because that doesn't look the same in the center. Of course, this mower, or well, I guess the mower is 27 years old. This engine's 26 years old. So they may have modified some of the parts. Some you have to consider, I think. We'll put that wire on, the shut-off wire. Okay, now we're going to put a 10 thousandths feeler gauge in here. Sometimes it's easier to do them one at a time. Sometimes it's easier to do it both at the same time. So we'll see. Looks like the bolt holes are going to line up. That's usually the first indicator that you have the wrong ignition coil, is they don't line up. I think this side can be tighter. I'm going to loosen this one and tighten it up a bit, I think. Yeah, that's better. Yep. So now we're going to take out the spark plug. Got some new spark plugs. We'll change those out, and we'll check for spark before we put it back in. Okay, so now we're going to check the gap. 30 to 35. Okay, so I am going to see if we have spark. The biggest problem is I don't know if my little drill can turn these big engines. I don't think I've ever tried it with this drill. But I saw a spark. That's the important thing. Yep, we have spark. So we'll put spark plug back in and button it back up. Trying to remember how these brackets go on. So there's a little lip right here on the shroud. So this little cutout on the bracket goes on that lip. Okay, so this piece here I'm just going to put on finger tight because I'm going to take it off again when I turn it over to take the sump off, so I can replace the oil slinger. Okay, so we're still waiting for parts for the oil slinger, so that's going to be a big project. Actually, got to take the sump off, replace the oil slinger, then put the sump back on with the new seal. Well, I didn't buy a shaft seal, crankshaft seal. I might have to, but I didn't buy one. But you got to replace the gasket, and then of course we got to put it back onto the mower. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was probably taking off or replacing the head gasket on this engine. So hope I can inspire you to fix something today so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.